Welcome to Did You Hear That? Your source for the top stories from the Star Wars universe. I'm Pete Fletzer, and along with my co-host Nick Milkey, we'll break down the biggest headlines of the week and share our thoughts on everything happening in that galaxy far, far away. Don't forget, you can catch us live every Thursday evening on our weekly show, ATGLive, over on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@the-SSW Network. Join the conversation, hear from special guests, and get the latest news as it happens. And now, this week's...
We are your source for all the Star Wars news of the week. And this week, it has been a dozen years of Disney. More confusion swirls around the Rey movie, the Mando movie wraps up, and the Skeleton Crew talks about the show. So let's get to it. A dozen years of Disney. Today marks the 12th anniversary of Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm, a move that forever changed the landscape of entertainment and the Star Wars franchise. On October 30th, 2012, Disney acquired Lucasfilm for $4.05 billion in cash and stock, bringing the iconic Star Wars and Indiana Jones franchises under the Disney umbrella. This acquisition paved the way for a new era of Star Wars content, including a slew of films, television series, theme park expansions, and multimedia ventures that have captivated fans worldwide. In the years following the acquisition, Disney launched the Star Wars sequel trilogy, beginning with The Force Awakens in 2015. The company also invested in creating spin-offs, including Rogue One and Solo, as well as Disney Plus series like The Mandalorian, Andor, and Ahsoka, which have redefined Star Wars storytelling for generations. Additionally, Galaxy's Edge, an immersive Star Wars theme park experience, opened in Disneyland and Disney World, transporting fans directly into the Star Wars universe. Pete, we're 12 years on. Disney's influence on Lucasfilm is undeniable, blending legacy with innovation as fans eagerly anticipate what the next chapters hold for one of the most beloved franchises in cinematic history. We talk week in and week out about Star Wars, about all the things that happen with Disney Star Wars. 12 years in, $4.05 billion. I'm not going to ask you, how is it going? We talk about that all the time. I'm going to ask you, in the 12 years of Disney Star Wars, what are some of your favorite things that have come out of this?
That's a really great question. I think, my favorite, first of all, I think my favorite thing is that we learned that we can tell Star Wars stories on television. I think we also learned that we shouldn't tell all Star Wars stories on television. Right. I think, I remember vividly the first episode of Mandalorian. I remember the build up to it, and I remember that ending where we saw Baby Yoda for the first time, and they did such a great job of maintaining that secrecy and allowing us all to have that sort of collective moment shared together. I think some of the things that Disney has learned about how to bring television, Star Wars to television, has been really important. Things like having the shows now drop at 9:00 Eastern time, 6:00 Pacific, so that we can all experience them together and have those conversations. And I also think, though, that they have, I think, in a way, and we've gone through this recently with a couple of our guests, I think they kind of felt like it was, at times, I feel like they thought it would be simple and easy to make money with Star Wars. And I'm not sure that it's gotten all the love and care it needs. And that's not to say that things have been bad, but it is to say that I think that it's not as simple and slam dunky as they might have thought. Yeah,
I agree with all of that. And I think, just, if nothing else, I'm in the kind of a look at the journey mode. Like, look at what Star Wars started as. Look at the stories we know of ping pong tables in a parking lot in the valley covered with battleship parts.
Right.
To this thing where it's on a platform where literally when we get done with this, I can go watch almost any Star Wars I want. Yep. And I can enjoy it and share it with my kids. We talked about that with Paul Scheer. The ability for Star Wars to continue to grow and change is my favorite thing, because it's not lost. It's not dead-ended. Because if George Lucas keeps it, at some point he gets older, he gets tired, and he maybe already did that 12 years ago when it was time to sell.
Yep.
And there's new, younger generations. There's Favreau's and Filoni's and, the people that are going to come behind that to be the stewards of this thing. I think I love that this purchase created the opportunity for Star Wars to continue living and growing and changing.
100%. And what I would agree with you on, and I would extend on that, is I don't care what any of the naysayers say. Without this purchase 12 years ago, you and I would not be sharing Star Wars with our
That's
kids. It would not be of interest to them. We'd be showing them movies that were 20 years old, 25 years old.
If I'm being perfect, if we're being really honest, if that didn't happen 12 years ago, we're not sitting here having this conversation. I don't think I have a Star Wars podcast.
Yep.
If Disney doesn't buy Star Wars, and I don't have a friend that we get re-excited about Star Wars and we spend 2.5 hours breaking down a 2.5 minute movie trailer and, all the misguided hours that we've spent in this hobby that we love. So there's so much that comes out of it, and there's still so much to come, which is exciting.
Yep.
But we move on to our next story, and we want to know what is going on with the Rey movie. Stephen Knight, the Peaky Blinders creator, tapped to write Lucasfilm's upcoming New Jedi Order movie, has exited the project. Knight's departure comes over a year after he joined the project, during which he submitted multiple drafts. Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy remains attached as the director, with Lucasfilm now searching for a new writer to take on the script. The film, set to star Daisy Ridley, will feature the return of her character Rey as she rebuilds the Jedi Order, a story that takes place 15 years after the events of Rise of Skywalker. In a recent interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Ridley hinted that the new Jedi Order project might be the beginning of a new series of films. Describing her return to the role of Rey, she said it feels both scary and exciting to revisit a character she, quote unquote, knows so well in such a different context. Notably, Ridley referred to the project as the New One/New Ones, sparking speculation that Lucasfilm may be planning a series centered around Rey's efforts to rebuild the Jedi. While no official title or release date has been announced, the project promises a significant new chapter for the Star Wars universe, potentially establishing a multi-film arc around this beloved Jedi character. Pete, is this as big a deal as certain parts of the internet are going to make it be?
This story actually dropped just as we were going on last week, so we didn't get a chance to go into it. But interestingly, that second piece that you added came shortly after that, where Daisy, and that's what's confusing about it. And that's why, to me, the question is, what is actually happening with this movie? Because you are, I mean, clearly Stephen Wright wrote a Star Wars movie.
Oh man, I'm watching a Stephen Wright Star Wars movie right away.
I will check that. But he's clearly left the project, and that's fine. And I like to believe it's because they just weren't happy with where it was going. And I don't know. I think we're in a situation where Disney has put themselves in a spot where they continue to talk about things that are coming. And what ends up happening is the excitement that gets built for it is actually ending up being diminished and giving fodder to people who are trying to find a problem with the Disney era of Star Wars. At the end of the day, I think if they are taking their time and doing it right, and if Stephen Knight was not the guy to do it, if David Lindelof was not the guy to do it, find somebody to do it. Here's what I'm going to throw out there. Call Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson understood the Rey story arc better than anybody else. Let's give him that trilogy that he was supposed to do and make it the Rey trilogy. And let's just give him all 3 movies and let him do it from top to bottom. I would love to see that.
Based on, and again, we talked about this, I think last week. I don't want them to announce things. I want them to present me something and say, hey, here's this thing we've been working on for the last 2 years. And we didn't tell you about it. Because like you don't tell your kids, hey, we're going to Disney World this weekend. You don't say it till you're at Disney World because something could happen. We were told years ago, Rian Johnson's going to do a trilogy.
Yep.
That, in theory, presupposes some sort of contractual agreement that was made somewhere back down the line, possibly. Let's exercise that contract. You hear every now and then, so-and-so still owes so-and-so 2 more projects or 2 more movies. They made a 3-movie deal. They made this. I hope that's true. And I think that's a fantastic idea. Let Rian swoop in here.
Yeah.
Fix it and tell the whole story. Tell the arc. That's what I wanted from him, was for him to have the opportunity to tell a full story if it involves 3 movies.
Well, and that's, the Knives Out trilogy is going to be done soon. That 3rd movie's coming out early next year. I just think that it becomes a marketing challenge because whether you like it or not, we need to be realistic about the response to Rian Johnson. Right. But you know what? He created again.
Look at his track record and let's go from there. That's what I would do if I was Disney. Start pumping out every review you see, every award he's won. Let's start talking about it's a big deal that this guy's going to do this. Mando and Grogu, it's a wrap.
Oh,
The upcoming
yeah.
Star Wars film, The Mandalorian and Grogu, has wrapped filming and is on track for a May 22nd, 2026 release. This highly anticipated project will see Pedro Pascal reprise his role as Din Djarin, joined by his Force-sensitive companion Grogu, marking their first official appearance on the big screen after captivating audiences on Disney Plus since 2019. Directed by Jon Favreau, the film will continue the storyline from the Mandalorian series, diving into new adventures while revisiting beloved characters. The movie will also explore Din Djarin's life post-retirement that we saw at the end of Mando Season 3, where he remains by Grogu's side. Returning characters include Katie Sackhoff's Bo-Katan Kryze, who aims to restore Mandalore, and Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka Tano on her quest to locate Grand Admiral Thrawn, portrayed by Lars Mikkelsen. The project also welcomes Sigourney Weaver to the Star Wars universe, though her role remains undisclosed, adding to the intrigue. Utilizing the cutting-edge volume technology, the production wrapped without major leaks, preserving suspense around plot details. As The Mandalorian and Grogu enters post-production, fans eagerly await Disney's first Star Wars movie since 2019. That's wild. The Rise of Skywalker, a milestone for Lucas's interconnected storytelling vision in its cinematic and streaming franchises. We haven't had a Star Wars movie in 5 years on the screen. We've gotten some series, we've gotten some, re-releases, but this is new Star Wars in the cinema. It's still over a year away. There's time, there's work. There's a part of me that thinks, why is it that far away? If they're done shooting, we should be ready for this next May. But we don't want to rush it. We've seen those things happen before. Let it breathe. Let it take time. Pete, who is Sigourney Weaver going to be in the Star Wars universe?
I hope she's going to be an Imperial. I want to see her as a bad guy. I know she's either a bad guy or Peli Motto's mother, one of the two. But I want to see her as a bad guy. How great would it be to see her as part of that Imperial remnant? Somebody who kind of swoops in, maybe fills a vacuum that's created with the exit of Moff Gideon. I want to see her because she's always such a great good guy. Yes. She was to me, she was one of the best parts of Avatar, the Avatar series. That's a conversation for another day, but I just don't understand how that is so huge. Let me ask, do you know anybody who loves Avatar?
I don't.
Who went to go see this movie?
I've never even watched it because of all the conversations I've heard about how it's not my cup of tea.
And she's great in that. She's like, to me, the best part of those movies. Of course, Aliens and Aliens and everything she's been in there. And, Zool and everything from Ghostbusters. But let's see her as a bad guy. I think she'd make a ripping Imperial. What are your thoughts?
I'm throwing it out there. I'm throwing it out there. She's Thrawn's number 2.
Oh, okay, cool.
I want her to serve at the pleasure of Grand Admiral Thrawn.
That would be fantastic, and it would keep her in that bad guy mode.
I don't think she works to be Price necessarily from Rebels.
I think she'll be too. Would she be too old for that? No,
I think she would be. I don't know because of the time jump, but I like her as a bad guy. I agree with you, and I also think that her playing off of Mikkelsen's Thrawn could provide some really juicy stuff. Yeah.
I mean, the only thing to all that stuff is her age. So she will be, I don't know how old she'll be, but I mean, it's the Imperial remnant. So it's, I don't know. I think if she's not an Imperial, I was going to say I'd be disappointed, but I'm not going to be.
Sigourney Weaver is currently 75 years old.
75. Okay. So I mean, she could be an old Imperial. No, not old. Sorry.
You never know.
Okay. All right. 75 is old. Let's admit it. Okay.
That's it.
We can say it.
Ageist Pete is here.
Here I am.
The captain of the Titanic, being ageist.
I'm the captain.
All right. Well, we've got one more story. Skeleton Crew details from Empire Magazine. Empire's latest issue dives deep into the creative minds behind Skeleton Crew, revealing insights from showrunner John Watts and directors David Lowery, Jake Schreier, Bryce Dallas Howard, and Lee Isaac Chung. They discuss everything from episode origins to their personal Star Wars inspirations. Howard highlighted the advanced production techniques inherited from The Mandalorian, particularly the immersive radio play approach, where actors recorded voices in advance that helped the director shape the episodes with a clear tonal vision. Lowery's episode features hand puppets, blending classic effects with modern tech, a mix he found magical. Each director shared their favorite Star Wars creatures, with Howard showing fondness for droids and teasing a special creature in her episode. Lowry recalled prune face action figures from his childhood, and Schreier admitted to being a nostalgic Ewok fan. John Watts wrapped up the interview by explaining how Skeleton Crew was inspired by a simple concept: kids unknowingly lost in the Star Wars galaxy trying to find their way home. The directors even imagined which other filmmakers they'd love to see tackle Star Wars, sparking visions of Spielberg and Coppola-style epics. I mean, there's so much to unpack in that. We've only got about 2.5 minutes, but Pete, I love the focus in this story and where this series seems to be heading, which we saw. It feels like early Mandalorian, where we heard about the Boba Fett rifle, the long, I forget what it's called. We see, the Kawaki and monkey lizards in that first trailer. It's pulling in some of those rememberals. It's pulling in some of those, hey, that thing is a thing. But it's things like puppets, and it's things like action figures that have a meaning, and droids. This seems like another group of folks who grew up loving Star Wars, getting the chance to make Star Wars. And I think that's where we get our best stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, it's funny because if it is aimed at kids, which we obviously have that inkling, and we talked a little bit about it on the last couple of weeks of the show. My kids, your kids, they're not going to recognize the teak from Ewoks. They're not going to recognize the prune face action figure or whichever, droid surprise that may be sitting in there. But done right, and it's funny because we've talked about this before. I think Star Wars television has done both extremely well and extremely not so great when it comes to bringing characters that have a history to life. I think bringing Ahsoka in, to those of us that have been Clone Wars fans and Ahsoka fans for forever, was fantastic, because the people who didn't know Ahsoka just knew her as, hey, she's that cool new Jedi person. A lot of the Mandalorian stuff was pretty deep, felt sort of Silmarillion kind of thing for Tolkien fans. So drop them in there with, and I'm encouraged by it being Bryce Dallas Howard back at this, because she gets it. She knows how to tell the stories. But I'm encouraged that, just like you said, and I think that's a really good point, is it's Star Wars fans making Star Wars, and making it in that sort of wondrous world, right? Versus Leslie Headland, who got Star Wars, man. She understood Star Wars. She knew the lore. She knew the books. She knew all the deep, deep stuff, but it was a heavy topic. This is Star Wars in that fun place, right? That as Eric is saying there on the screen about, for kids, being young at heart and being a kid at heart, that's what Star Wars needs too, right? Because it's going to be followed by Andor in April-ish, right? Which is going to be some heavy stuff. So let's get people who love Star Wars and bring the fun, right? I think. Well,
and let's look at, we talk about Goonies all the time because we're Gen Xers and we grew up with things like Goonies and E.T., and that's what this has been pitched as, an Amblin style kids adventure, whatever. But you dial that up to a little bit more modern times. Look at what Stranger Things has done. Stranger Things started out with young kid. That cast is all grown now because we're still waiting for that eventual, final season 5 or whatever it is. But there's still room for that. And those are the things that still click because it's kids, it's fun, it's adventure filled, and there's a little bit of danger. There's a little bit of a jump scare, but it's not so heavy that we have to take it so seriously. We get to just enjoy Star Wars. So
thanks for tuning in to Did You Hear That? Remember, you can join us live every Thursday evening on YouTube at youtube.com/@the SSW Network for all the latest Star Wars news and conversations with special guests. This podcast stream is also home to Around the Galaxy, the weekly Star Wars interview show where we talk to the people behind the Star Wars fandom. Don't forget to connect with us on socials. Find us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at the SSW Network, and on Facebook at facebook.com/the SSW Network. You can also support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/the SSW Network, or leave us a voicemail at 504-321-1501. That's 504-321-1501. Don't miss out on the excitement, and we'll see you next time Around the Galaxy. This podcast is copyright 2024 Pete and the Seed Studios, and our music is by the band Apollo's Ghost.